This is Craig Double again, and this is going to be my last experiment for Chemistry 1 lab. This is going to be Lab 7 for chemical bonding. And for this lab, we're going to explore the melting points of different compounds and correlate them to the bond type. Now, I've already done some studying using my periodic table, and in my last video of part 3 for the exercise 1, I talked about uh, how the bonds form, whether they're ionic or if they're covalent. And typically, make sure you get this right here, metals and nonmetals, they form ionic bonds. And then if you have two or more nonmetals together, they form covalent bonds. So the compounds we're going to work with today in this lab are sucrose, sodium chloride, and stearic acid. And what I predict is going to happen is that my sucrose and stearic acid will probably melt because they're covalent bonds, and I think that sodium chloride, due to being a ionic bond, may not melt in this experiment. We're going to find out. We're going to see what happens here. So we'll start off. I'll show you. Give me a second here. I got to go back to my computer or my camera view. All right. We'll kind of show you how I set up the lab. So I've already measured out my chemicals ahead of time, but the things you're going to need for this lab are obviously the baggies of 1 gram, and there's a little bit more than 1 gram in each one of these bags of the sodium chloride, stearic acid, and sucrose. I got some metal forceps. I've got my ring stand, which is over here. Set up below it is my sterno. And the sterno, you want to have it set up so that your ring stand is approximately 3 inches from the base of the area you're working with. That's what the instructions say to do. So it's pretty close and should be good to go for this experiment to see what happens to our chemicals. So I'm going to keep the camera kind of angled this way because I'm going to move my sterno and ring stand closer to myself when we start this experiment so I can reach it very easily. All right, you're going to need a stopwatch timer. I've already used my permanent marker to label my tin or my aluminum cupcake foils. I'm not really sure yet, and hopefully I don't find out while I'm doing this video. I'm not really sure why I needed the aluminum foil sheets. It doesn't really talk about it when I went through this lab a couple times, kind of walked through it. It doesn't really talk about using these, but hopefully, it's not a surprise, and we get to that point if I need to use them, I got them. They're ready to go. I've already used my scale to measure out my chemicals, so I'm not going to need that for this anytime soon. I've got them all measured out, ready to go. I've used my spatula to get the chemicals out of the bag. And then metal forceps, again, that's so we can grab the aluminum cupcake foils off the ring stand after we melt the chemicals so we don't burn our fingers. And then the matches for lighting up the sterno. All right, so that's what you'll need. Step 1, put on safety glasses and gloves. Got that. And I use this to actually label my cupcake wrappers. And then I went ahead and measured out all my chemicals ahead of time using the gloves. So I'm really down to, I've done step 4 and 5. So I'm really down to step 6. And step 6 tells you to predict which compound you will believe will melt first and record your prediction in table 3. And I've already done that in my my pre-lab question, and my reasoning in question 1, my answer would be is I think it's going to be the stearic acid, and that's really based on it being a covalent bond. That's why I think it's going to melt faster. Why? Because covalent bonds typically have a lower boiling point when when you compare them to an ionic compound. So there we go. All right, so that's my prediction, and I've kind of already discussed what I think is going to actually happen. I don't think the sodium chloride will be surprising to see if it actually melts. All right, it tells you to fasten the ring on the ring stand and cover with the ring with foil to create a platform. There we go. Ring with foil to create a platform. There we go. That's what I missed. So that's what you need this foil for. going to need to make a platform on there so that my cupcake wrapper doesn't go through. So that makes total sense. So we're going to make a little platform here. Kind of show you. Move this in the view. All right. So I guess I want to wrap this around. That's what I'm going to end up doing here. Make a little platform here. Okay. Turn this corner over so it holds. And turn this corner over so it holds. All right, so there's my platform. And just to test this out, we'll carefully, I've got my sucrose right here, carefully set this on there, see what it'll hold good. All right, it should be fine. All right, so this will work pretty good. My goal here is when I repeat all these things, once I light the sterno, I keep it going until I get through all three. So that's why I've kind of pre-set up everything here ahead of time. All right, so I have my cover with the ring with foil to create a platform rather than an open ring to set the cupcake wrappers on. So there's where I was missing. I knew I was going to find it, and there it is in step 7. The ring should be positioned approximately 3 inches above the surface you're working on. Done. Choose an area that is well ventilated and place your sterno fuel can on a level heat resistant surface. So my heat resistant surface is under here. What I can do, because I have it ready to go, which would make sense, is I've got my hot pad standing by just in case I need to move it around or it starts to get hot. I'll put that off to the side here. Okay, so we're there. I know that using the sterno tube on this platform has worked fine before because we've done it in previous labs, or a previous lab. All right, note, both the matches and sterno can cause fire or burns to skin, clothing, or lab materials if the flame comes in contact with them. Do not stick any body part, loose clothing, or other flammable items in or near the flame. Never grab hot labware with bare skin exposed. So I'm going to have my handy dandy hot pad here to make sure if I did have to grab it, I could grab it safely. Safety first. All right. Number 9, remove your gloves before performing the rest of this experiment. So take these off. Why? Because handling fire is extremely dangerous, and burns with gloves are definitely worse than without. So we'll put the gloves off to the side. No gloves. All right. Moving on to step 10. I've already read the directions on my sterno cooking fuel can. I'm going to use my spatula to open it up without touching any of the contents. So now this is where I'm going to move away anything that might be, do another check here. I'm going to move my anything that might be flammable far away from my stern tube or anything that could melt. And I'm going to keep my procedure here on the right hand side so I don't get myself into any trouble here. All right. Okay. I got my pencil over here, matches over here, forceps over here. And grab my spatula and take the lid off. And you want to be careful not to touch any of the contents in here. It's not good to get that on your skin. So we'll pop that off. All right. And carefully pull the lid off to the side. I'm going to need the lid kind of close by, so I'm ready to, if I need to put this out, the fastest way to put out the sterno tube or any sterno tube is to put the cap, just put it back on. Don't try to blow on it or anything like that. All right, so I got the cap off my sterno fuel can. Then use your spatula. Yep, got that. Put the lid aside. Be careful not to touch any of the contents. If you accidentally do touch it, make sure you wash your hands before you proceed with the experiment. Check. All right, place the cupcake wrapper with sucrose on the ring. So I've got my cupcake wrapper. It's labeled sucrose. I'm going to place it on the ring here. All right, and I'm going to move this a little bit closer so hopefully you can see the effects. I'm more worried about the safety than anything. So if you get to see it, great. If not, I'm sorry. All right, so I've got my sucrose on top of my rack here. All right, or on top of my ring. Done. All right, carefully touch a lit match to the sterno contents. The contents will flame up immediately. Under bright lights, you may not be able to see the flame, but know that it's there. Be sure to blow out the match once the sterno tube is lit. When I blow out my match, I'm just going to set it on the side here on top of my marble top. Should be fine. Place the sterno can under the ring or the ring stand. Carefully observe the setup while the sterno is in use. Do not leave the setup unattended while exposed to the sterno. And I'm going to start my stopwatch, so I have it ready to go here. And I'm going to calculate or measure the time it takes for the sucrose to melt. For all three of these, it says if you get to a point where it hasn't melted after 5 minutes, you just record it as did not melt. So I kind of anticipate that might happen with my sodium chloride. All right, now I'm going to repeat the melting point test for the sodium chloride and stearic acid. Use the forceps to remove and place the wrappers above the flame. So once we get the sterno going, I'll be using these. And just as a test, what I want to do after, so I got to take pictures of this after it melts. I'm going to just check to make sure I can grab it. I know where to grab it, and I'm not going to spill anything. So I can just bring it off to the side and set it down. I'm going to bring it off to the side, set it down here on the left. So I'm going to grab from the right, set it on there, and then move to the left. All right, here we go. So okay, my sterno tube is lit. My match is out. It's off to the side here. You can kind of already feel the heat from it. I'm going to set it underneath, and I'm going to start my timer. And I'm observing the sucrose in the cupcake wrapper and watching it closely. Watching the underneath too of the aluminum wrap. Make sure I'm not starting anything on fire here. All right, it's looking good. Definitely want to be careful. It says you don't want to have too much air blowing around this area because it could blow off the wrapper and stuff. So be careful when you're worried about the well-ventilated area. You don't want to have fans blowing in on your experiment. It would blow things all around. All right, I don't see anything happening yet. We're at approximately 4-6 seconds. Okay, we're at now 1 minute and 20 seconds. We're sitting at 2 minutes, over 2 minutes, 2 minutes and 13 seconds. Make sure this is underneath right without dumping this thing over. Coming up on 3 minutes. Okay, I'm starting to see some changes here. It looks like it's Well, maybe kind of see some spots where it might be melting. Oh yeah, there it goes. Okay. All right. Yep, I think it's starting to melt. Okay. I think it would be definitely hard to see here on the camera view there. If I had a GoPro, I'd probably get a better angle. But all right. I'll try to share if I can figure it out. I'll try to share the pictures I take of this. So we're coming up on 4 minutes, and I'm starting to see the color change from a nice white to a liquid. You kind of see that it's changing, starting to change to liquid. You're starting to see the crystals, or I'm sorry, the sucrose. They're starting to melt here. Okay, we're on 4 minutes and 40 seconds, and I'm just gonna check. See, oh yeah, all right. You can definitely see a check with the forceps here that it's trying to melt. Okay, that was my observation so far. All right, and we're at 5 minutes. I didn't see anything. Check the bottom here. I didn't really fully melt. It's starting to melt. I think it just hasn't gotten hot enough, maybe because I have too much aluminum foil. It's not getting the heat, but it did melt a little bit. Okay. Okay, so it should be at my limit here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the sucrose. I did get a little bit of part of it to melt. Move the matches out of the way here. And I'll show you that. I'll take a picture. Hopefully I can get it on the attached with my video on YouTube so you guys can see what it should look like. So it started, I think, about 3 minutes and 40 seconds. I'll go back and look at my video to actually verify when it started melting. But it seemed to take quite some time for the sucrose to really get going. And not all of it melted. Only a part of it actually melted. And I got to about the 6 minute point. I was done measuring it. But around 3 minutes to 4 minutes, it started. Maybe halfway through 4 minutes 30 seconds, it actually started to melt. But anyways, we're gonna go ahead and move on. We're gonna do the sodium chloride now. This is the one I anticipate is not gonna melt at all. So we'll reset the stopwatch here. Put the sodium chloride on. I think maybe if I spread this out a little bit. Okay. I'll go ahead and put the sodium chloride on next and see what happens. All right. All right, starting the sodium chloride. And I'm going to go ahead and pause here because I don't anticipate anything to happen. If anything does happen, I'm going to go ahead and I'll restart the video and explain what's going on. Okay, so 4 minutes and 30 seconds has elapsed. We are coming up to the 5 minute point, and for the sodium chloride, I've seen no change occur. So again, we're coming up on 5 minutes here. I'm going to go ahead and probably remove this wrapper, which I anticipated, right? It's an ionic compound, so I don't anticipate it's going to, it would take a lot longer to actually try to melt this, I think, or it may not melt at all. All right, so we're at 5 minutes now and 6 seconds, so I think we can call that no melting. So greater than 5 minutes, no melting occurred. I'll carefully pull that off, put it off the side here. That's the sodium chloride. All right. Okay, next up is the stearic acid. I do anticipate that this one is going to melt a little bit quicker, so we'll reset our stopwatch, and we're going to go ahead and set the stearic acid on and time it. So the stearic acid's on there. Get my timer. And oh wow, immediately you can start to see that it's starting to melt. That is amazing. So it started melting around 5 seconds, almost immediately, and it'll keep going. So we'll time to see when it looks like this might completely melt. It's going pretty quick. Keep an eye on this wrapper so none of it drips off. Oh wow. Yep. There we go. Keep it tilted this way a little bit. And yep, it's completely melting. Actually, a little worried that some of it might spill. All right. Yep, and we're at 5.2 seconds, and it completely melted. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull it off right away here without spilling any of it. Okay. And there it is. It's gone. All right, so that's that. I'm gonna go ahead and remove my sterno because it's starting to smoke a little bit. So we'll carefully kind of push this off, move it around, and I'm going to use my forceps to help me out with this because this can be pretty hot. Move this off to the side here. All right, and I'm going to put my cap on the sterno to put it out. And it is out. Okay. So that's it. That's the lab, and that is interesting. Look at that. Once it started to cool down after it melted, it's starting to solidify again, the stearic acid. So I'm going to go ahead and I kind of want to show you the results here. I did spill a little bit, I guess, with the cupcake wrapper. I guess a lesson learned, make it so that none of the contents can spill off of it. But I want to show you guys what I got. So I'll bring this over here. Give you a better view. Hopefully it captures in the camera without touching the sterno tube over there. Okay, so if you look, we got the 3 wrappers there. The one on the very bottom is going to be the stearic acid. You can see it crystallize. It was actually clear, almost a clear liquid after it all completely melted. And then it's slowly cooling and crystallizing again. Pretty neat. The sucrose is the middle one, and you can see, hopefully you can see that there's a small spot there where it melted. And again, I got to go back and look at, I think I came up with 3 minutes and 40 seconds or so is when it started to melt. But it didn't completely melt for me, the sucrose. And then in the back is the sodium chloride, and not much happened with the sodium chloride. So hopefully this video was helpful, and that's all I got for my Chemistry 1 labs. I'm going to take a picture of each one of these because it's required for the lab to turn in, showing the results, each one of my aluminum foils. I got to record my times in the table as well and finish up my post lab. Everybody have a good evening.